I
pushed all the this week.
Almost.
Almost. Being on an infinity mirror. So welcome to the next episode of Quarkus Insights. I think it's Quarkus Insights 163. And we're going to be talking about what's new with LangChain4j. And so we've got Dimitrios and Georgios to walk us through the new things. But before then, I think we've got a little bit of news, which means I get to push one more button. I get to push the news button. It's just, it's like, an activity set for children. You just want to push the buttons. But we've got a couple of new blogs. So we've got a micro release as usual, but we've also got a couple of new blogs. And so the first one is a bit more of a deep dive into the Quarkus search. So we've had a new Quarkus search since January. And we've been starting to publish a series of kind of deep dive under the hoods of exactly how it works. And so the next one of that has come out by Marco.
Yeah. And maybe just to remind people that the search we talk about here is that in the guides, you now have this, you had this filter for ages, which is let's call it a smart dumb search in JavaScript client side on like keywords. But now you can go for like, what would we say, YAMOC, which is not a keyword we have anywhere, I think, but you will find all the articles of blog guides that talks about it. Or you can say YAMOC and Postgres and see, there's one that's there. Right. So this is actually backed by Quarkus and Elasticsearch in the backend of that.
Yep, eating our own dog food, as you would hope.
Yes, and we're looking into expand this to certain sorts of blogs and that kind of thing. But we start out small.
Yeah.
Where are we actually running this?
It's on an OpenShift cluster somewhere in a magical place.
The beauty of the cloud is you don't need to know where it is.
Yeah.
Oh, I don't want to.
Yeah. So, but the nice thing is it doesn't require that much, actually. We were surprised how little it actually do. So yeah, maybe it's because people don't do it enough. So here's the challenge. Search more and then see if you can crash it and see what happens.
Is it written on Quarkus?
Yeah, no, it's a Quarkus app with Hibernate search running, I believe, in an OpenShift cluster. But I also think we have a session planned in some near future insight to talk about this. But yeah. So yeah. Yes, sir.
Yeah,
and then there was
one more as well. Yeah. So from Quarkus from GraalVM for Java 21, you can get an out-of-memory dump if you go out of memory, which is always useful for diagnostics. And so Galder's written up a nice set of instructions on exactly how it works and what to do.
Yeah. No, and this just means you can see, like, investigate what's the stuff that causing it, right? Which can be different from a native image versus JVM mode. So yeah. Cool. But no, try out the search and read the blogs. Those are good. Okay.
So
I'm waiting to think.
we can jump into the main topic now, which is LangChain4j. So I guess maybe actually before we start, both of you are pretty regular on Quarkus Insights, but just in case anybody hasn't seen you for a while, maybe Dimitrios and Georgios, you can introduce yourselves.
Go ahead, George.
Yeah, so I'm George, based in Athens, Greece. I've been working on the Quarkus team for a few years now, doing various things. Lately, one of the main focuses is this LangChain4j integration. So we've been exploring a lot of stuff, trying to make basically the usage of large language models in Quarkus applications just an integration problem, basically. To quote my friend Yannis, we're trying to make consuming these types of services as simple as possible, right? And do it in a way that's compatible with enterprise expectations. So like you would get all the stuff like resilience and metrics and observability, all that stuff should just work out of the box, right? That's the big idea. Obviously, this space is so young, and one interesting thing that I heard Dimitrios say a few days ago, since we were in DevOps Greece previous week, Dimitrios mentioned that a whole lot of people were talking about Gen AI, but very few people were actually showing it, and we've been showing it since, I don't know, what is it, 4 or 5, 6 months ago? I don't even remember.
In November. So
November. Wow.
Yeah. We had the first episode was like 1st December or the last day of November or something. That was when we did it.
Very cool.
Yeah, and Dimitrios. I've been overseeing some teams in Red Hat like EAP, Quarkus, and others, Vertex, Spring Boot. And I think this is a very exciting area for us to be involved. This is in the making, so we try to see how to help people, get started with LLMs on Java. There was a big gap in there, and I think we have a very nice integration with the LangChain4j project. And if you haven't seen it already, I think the combination works great. So last week I was with George also in Athens. We had a workshop and a talk, and it went surprisingly well. Normally workshops, have all sorts of problems, but this one actually works.
It's like the demo gods, but multiplied by the number of participants in the room.
And all was good, which shows exactly what we've been saying and what George said, that it's very easy to get started with those technologies. We'll probably show you some examples right now. And then we try to make the complex simple or possible. So it's exciting times to be. So I guess let's hit it. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I think before we dive into the technology, we've got a really important starting question, which is, why do you sound the way you do, George? Because I have to say, when I met Georgios, that was my first question as well.
You mean my English accent is not Greek? Yeah, so that's...
You have an AI too.
Yeah, exactly. I have an AI that runs flawlessly. So yeah, that's an interesting question that I've been getting since the day I joined Red Hat, basically, because my name couldn't be more Greek, name and last name. But anyway, first name translates to George, obviously. That's the easy part. The story is that my father is Greek and my mother is American from California. And I was actually born in California. But my father, as all Greeks, wanted to move back to Greece because, Greece is the best place in the world, always has been. So yeah, we moved back when I was like 2, something like that. So I essentially grew up in Greece, but we spoke English at home. Both my parents spoke English to us, my brother and myself. And my father, actually, he also, his accent is almost imperceptible, although he did not grow up. And when he actually went to the United States, he didn't speak a word of English. But he picked it up, and my parents always spoke English to us. I actually probably didn't even start speaking Greek to my father until I was like a teenager or something like that. So that was a huge advantage for me because I'm terrible at languages. So had my parents not spoken English to me, I don't know how I would have picked it up.
I can verify though that Georgios Greek is very Greek. So you don't have any doubts about that. It's like as good as
it's not like he's an imposter.
No.
Yes, no,
real
I'm super lucky because my Greek sounds Greek, my English sounds American. My looks are generic enough that I can fit in like both societies without anybody asking any questions or anything. So yeah, I'm super lucky when it comes to that.
Yeah.
Cool. And I can see, like, we just talked about like making LLMs easy to use, and I can tell you we are hitting the records for most active viewers at this time on our podcast. So
Wow.
apparently we talk about interesting stuff. So let's keep talking about dialects and accents, like an LLM. So
lovely.
different ones. Okay, so Georgios and Dimitrios, what we've talked about LangChain. Maybe you can just give a quick overview of what Quarkus LangChain is, and then dive into what happened since some months ago, and we take from there.
Yes. So maybe Dimitrios wants to take this one because he did a presentation with Zineb at Drevox Greece, which was basically this topic.
Well, it's simple. Well, I'll share this common terminology. LangChain is the hibernate of LLMs, as Max likes to say. It abstracts the model and the API. So whatever API you talk to, whatever model runs behind it, you can access it in a uniform way. And together with that, all the complexity with managing state, parsing, the peculiarities of the different APIs and models, tool support. Maybe we'll talk about this. So all that you don't have to do it. And in the Quarkus context, we have a very nice integration that goes along and helps you deal with LangChain in an even easier way, and let's say more enterprisey and more user friendly for the developer. So that would be like in 3 lines what this is about.
I have to say those two words don't always go together.
You mean enterprisey and user friendly?
Yeah.
Well, that's what
Still, if
Quarkus
you can
did.
get both, then you're definitely winning.
It's Quarkus, yeah.
No, for me, the big thing is with the AI is like when I first saw it, which is back in like November 2 years ago, or 1 year and a half ago. It was just like, hey, this feels magical and mystical. Like this does something I can't understand. And I spent some time on it, and I looked like, hey, this is just like numbers, and like this is just like a service. So when they made the API available, I was like, hey, like this can actually be used for applications, and I realized, hey, this is really powerful, but it's the same thing you've seen. Like it's like a database or a Kafka connection, or it's something you can give some data and get a response back that you then can use in your application. Which then on top does something that's magical of like comprehension and understanding and summarizing and that kind of thing. But yeah, so it was awesome when we did
the difference being it's completely stateless.
Yeah,
and it's also not deterministic.
Yes,
to say the least.
That's the funny part about it. Yeah.
Testing becomes a whole new adventure.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, and by the way, just because I see there's a lot of people here, so maybe people who haven't seen it before, you just ask questions in the chat or whatever, wherever you come from, and we will interweave them into here. But maybe like we talk about like making it magical and easy, maybe show some code and see like what the mystical is and what you can do with it.
Yes. Let's start showing the magic, and then we can peel back the onion little by little. Okay, so everything I plan to show here today is part of the Quarkus LangChain4j repository. My screen is being shown, right?
A bit small, but yeah.
It is, yeah.
Let me make it a little bigger.
Yeah.
Okay.
Cool.
Is this better?
Yeah.
Excellent. So I would suggest that anybody who's like not seen Quarkus LangChain4j and wants to start playing with it immediately, the first thing you can do is go to Quarkus LangChain4j. If you just search like Quarkus LangChain4j in Google, whatever, it should be the first thing that comes up. So it's our GitHub repository. And if you go to the samples directory, you have some standalone examples of how it can be used, right? So you could just clone the repository, go CD into any one of these and MVN Quarkus dev or whatever, and everything just works, right? You don't have to do anything else. So that's the easiest thing to do to get a feeling of what this stuff looks like. So let's start with like, okay, so I think since we have a lot of people that are here, they might have never seen this before. We might want to start with the absolute simplest example, which would be like the review triage, right? So review triage, what it does basically is it's a service where all you're doing is that you're giving it a piece of text and you're asking the LLM to say whether it's positive or negative, right? So there's an enum that we call evaluation, and it has two values, positive, negative, right? And we're exposing a REST API where we want to give the user the ability to provide text, and we want to respond on whether it's positive or negative, right? So obviously, like imagine in the pre LLM world. So 2 years ago, let's go back to 2 years ago, like Max said, right? The REST API thing would be super easy, like it is now, but how you would do the sentiment analysis, that would become weird, right? Like, it's like most of us folks in the Java world are like, have no clue of natural language processing. Well, in today's world, this is like so easy because all you need to do is call LLM-based service and tell it what to do, and it will just respond back. So the magic here is this thing that we call the triage service, and it's essentially for those who have never seen what Quarkus LangChain4j provides, is that it provides you a way to declaratively interact with the LLM, right? So what you're doing is you're just saying that I want Quarkus to create me a service which will take a review, usually provided by a user, as an input, and I want you to respond with something that says whether the sentiment is positive or negative. And the first place you start seeing LLM-based terminology come into play is these annotations, the system message and the user message. So these are very, very important. And this is where like the prompt engineering you keep hearing about comes into play. So what it means here, the system message is the one that sets the context, right? So you're essentially giving the LLM the basic instructions of what it's supposed to do, right? Because you don't want, like in this case, you don't want a general chatbot. You want something that can specifically say whether a review is positive or negative. So you set the tone in the system message here. And then in the user message, you give like more examples of what you want it to do. You're telling it like, I love your bank is positive, or whatever, this French thing that I can't pronounce is positive. I hate your bank is the worst, right? And we're telling it, and this is a very important part, that it should respond as JSON, right? So what that does is it turns the instructions that are written in natural language, any of us could write these instructions, into a way for us to then get back stuff that we can consume as Java developers. So as Java developers, what we can consume is we can consume interfaces and classes that return stuff, right? With hopefully POJOs. Any questions so far? I think hopefully it's pretty simple so far, right?
George, I think we need to say that the prompt is essentially a template.
Yes, that was the next thing I was going to say. Yes,
Oh,
exactly.
Where you
right. So yeah, here we're seeing. I should mention. Okay, for those who have perhaps not been following about the last couple months of Quarkus, Quarkus now since 3.7 is Java 17. all the way, Java 17 plus, right? So that now we're using the Java 17 string, the multi-line string thing, right? So we can forget about that pre-Java 17 multi-line stuff. Now just using a multi-line string where this is a template, right? And what it does is we're actually describing what we want, and we're saying that, okay, here is the review from the user. And this is a classic case of a template, right? You provide the general information, and some piece of the information needs to be provided at runtime, and that is the review. And in the Quarkus LangChain4j integration, these templates are Qt templates. So Qt is the templating engine we have in Quarkus. It works, it has build times, like type checking and all that cool stuff. So all that stuff, it has a bunch of like built-in functions you can use. All that stuff just works out of the box with the Quarkus LangChain4j integration, right? So any expressions you wanted to write here, you could. I'm not sure it's terribly useful, but there are circumstances that you could use. So imagine that all you need in order to be able to get the sentiment analysis out of a piece of text the user provided is this interface, right? And for folks that have never seen this before, you're like, well, where's the magic, right? Well, the magic is hidden into, first of all, what Quarkus does to implement this, and second of all, the text that is just sent to the LLM, and the LLM responds with what it needs to respond with, the JSON we've described, that we then turn into the POJO, right? So enough talk, I would say. So let's see this in action. So if I go to my samples directory, and you'll have to excuse my voice, it's a little not in its best shape.
And I think while you start the application, I'll say one thing that's important to see is like that you could always just call it, like you can call the API directly and set this up yourself, right? There's no magic in that sense. This is all simple stuff. It's just all those patterns, all those like getting back and from the text to the POJO and setting up. It's just removed. Like you just with an annotation, we do it for you.
Yes, absolutely. Well, yeah, that's a very good point that Max said. Like we saw actually at Devox Greece, there was a talk I have in mind specifically that was actually using like the Java HTTP client in order to like interact with OpenAI REST APIs, just like lowest possible level. You can do that. You absolutely can. But it gets super tedious once you start needing this stuff.
Restrictive. Yeah. And of course, the other thing is what you see here will work with whatever model extension you have included. So in this case, we'll probably go with ChatGPT OpenAI, but you can swap this with Azure OpenAI, Google, Vertex, whatever, local Llama, and whatnot, and this won't change your code if the template will work in this other model, right?
Yes, absolutely. That is absolutely correct. That is why you mentioned earlier that a quote from Max with that LangChain4j is like the hibernate of LLMs in the sense that it provides the proper abstractions that you can use in order to not care, basically, as a developer, what the actual LLM is that's being used behind the scenes, right? Because you just use the high-level abstractions, which in the case of Quarkus are even higher. So a question that sometimes comes up is like, okay, what does Quarkus provide over the base LangChain4j? Well, there's a lot of stuff, and we've detailed it in the documentation. I can point to it later, but this declarative style here that we have is Quarkus specific, right? That there is something analogous in upstream LangChain4j, but it's not as simple as this. And there are more stuff that we do behind the scenes that I'll explain soon. So now we've started it, right? So I've started just NVM Quarkus dev, regular Quarkus application. I opened the browser and I get this UI, right? So if I say this product was phenomenal and I submit, let's see what happens. I said, I get back what I expected, right? Thanks for kind words, delay, blah, blah, blah. So it understood that the sentiment was positive. Let's try and make sure that it knows what to do with negative stuff. I didn't like this much. Let's make it different. I didn't care for this much. Oh, we apologize for your inconvenience, right? So it understands extremely well what the language context is, right? And I used like simple language here just to get the demo across. But if I were to use like more like idiomatic American or like Canadian or British English, like it understands all that stuff way better than like any human can for all this.
And
stuff, right?
in other languages, huh?
Oh yeah, other languages too, of course. Yeah.
Yes.
Let's try Greek. Not that most people will understand what I'm writing, but I'll have Dimitris verify that this is. Like I said, that I didn't like it at all in Greek, and it says, "Oh, I'm sorry, you were not satisfied." Somebody will reach out.
I wrote many years ago, I worked on a project where we were doing sentiment analysis of this kind of user-generated content and for a bank, actually. And we had a problem because at the time, the model couldn't really handle two sentiments in the same review. So if you said, for example, I went to Alpha Bank and I had such a terrible experience, so I'm really happy with how Beta Bank treats me, it would say, oh, look, that's a negative review because it's got these negative words. So can we try something like that?
Yes. I went to one of your competitors and I was so disappointed.
It's gonna be fun.
At their customer service. Come on. Your bank, on the other hand, is a breath of fresh air. Let's see. Thank you for your kind words. Exactly. So it just knew, right? It fully understands, and this isn't even the most powerful model. This example is using OpenAI's GPT 3.5. So this is probably over a year old by now, right? So now there's GPT 4.5, and a bunch of the other competitors have super good models too, right?
Yeah, and then this is the thing. It's like once you realize you can do stuff like this, it's like, oh, you can see positive, negative. You can also you can have reviews. You can look for patterns in social posts, or you can look in patterns of reports written by your publisher or whatever, and see if there's some patterns there.
I mean, this kind of thing makes perfect sense for anything that's a user review, right? Like most people don't have time to read all the reviews for their stuff or whatever. So this could be very great. Another thing that we're not going to show here, but it's very good at it, it's very similar, is summarization of content, right? So I've heard from plenty of people that, oh yeah, I'm going to start using a local model in order to summarize long articles or emails or whatever, so I don't have to read through everything.
Like that one is because that's actually I think most of us here at least reads a lot of email and process a lot of issues and trackers and stuff. And even though we work in a lot of open source, we have internal emails that can't be it's for internal stuff, and it's the same for other companies. And being able to, you can write this, this is what I've done. I've written a Quarkus app that uses this, but it runs the model locally against my email, so nothing ever leaves my machine. Right. So that's a pretty
if we have time later on, we'll touch on what we plan to do for make the local experience better.
I saw a question for the code. If you can go back to
yes.
And this is from Stephen as follows: does the system message just get pre-penned to the user message?
Very good question. Very good question. So let's actually see what that looks like in practice, right? One thing that we really, really want when you're developing, you want to be able to see what's going on the wire, right? So what are we sending to OpenAI in this case. And what are we getting back? Log requests. Let's just do log requests for now. Okay, so I will refresh, hit it. Okay, so OpenAI log requests. I don't see it here. I
think you need to put the OpenAI in the property, right?
Ah, sorry. Yes, I missed OpenAI. Yes, right.
It's actually quite. I would like to have one and don't have to remember the specific vendor, but that's.
Yeah, I was thinking about that as well because I was looking at I was doing the demo earlier with like changing it to Mistral and then Anthropic, and I did see the same thing. Like, yeah, why do I have to do this? So I'll do that. I'll do that. I'll make a generalized setting. Yeah. So here you are, basically. How does this work? This is the entire content that we sent. I'll get this here and I'll put it into a Scratch, a JSON Scratch. JSON. Here we go. No, sorry. This. Here you go. And let's make this bigger. So here's what we're sending. The body of the post message we're sending to OpenAI. We are saying that here are the messages. The first message is the system message, and what we're sending here corresponds exactly to what's in the system message. The second one, which is the user message, right? And this one is the evaluated template. So it's the result of taking this template and applying what we passed in here, right? That's why Dimitrios said earlier, or it was Max, I don't remember who was it. There's no real magic here. Like this is essentially what happened, what goes on the wire to OpenAI.
Yeah.
But George, this depends also on the model. So I think another model will have a different convention for system message.
Yes, well that is true. But for example, like all OpenAI's, well, actually, so no, it's not exactly true. It depends on the API, on the serving endpoint of the model, right? So there's two different things. There's the model itself, and there's how the model is being served. Now, for all of us who were first exposed to this stuff from ChatGPT, it's the same thing, right? In ChatGPT, you don't really, in OpenAI, whatever, you don't really distinguish between the model and the service itself. But it is very easy, for example, to run a llama, right? And when you run a llama, you can run like the Llama 3 model, latest one from Meta, but you can run it with the OpenAI compatible API serving. So in that case, what you would send this. You would not send the Ollama, the original Ollama API format, right? And then the same goes for other API servers as well, like the OpenShift stuff or IBM, BAM, Watson X, whatever. They all have different formats, but like hopefully, I'm hoping at some point things will coalesce around whatever is most used, which at this point seems to be OpenAI's API. Does that make sense?
Yep.
Awesome. Do we have any more questions, or should we move on to like the next sample?
We do, yeah, and I think it follows
Excellent.
nicely on from what we've been talking about, which is it possible to build multi-agent and connect them together?
Yes, it is. And Sebi, who was on the call, I saw him say hello earlier, has actually done this, right? I remember he tweeted that he had these two bots talking to each other. Perhaps he can shed some light like on how exactly he did, or if he has the code somewhere. But it's absolutely possible because from the point of view of an AI service or an agent, bot, whatever you want to call it, it doesn't know who it's interacting with, right? It doesn't even have state. All it knows is a series of messages like this that are coming in, right? It doesn't know like how these were generated or anything like that. So yeah, it's absolutely possible. And I think he actually said that the conversation went into different weird avenues. So it'd be awesome to get some more information from him.
I think we need to move into some of the new stuff, George.
Yeah. Okay. So new stuff. Basically, let's go to the chatbot, right? So there's one chatbot. There's an example. There are a few chatbot examples. The one chatbot example we'll start with is the one that says like just chatbot, right? And what this is basically is exactly what it says. It's just a chatbot. That the interesting thing here is that it answers questions about financial products, right? And it has a bunch of other information like how it's supposed to respond, whatever. But the cool thing here is that it uses data from a specific repository. And what this does, basically, in this case, is that it just takes a bunch of TXT files and it answers questions based on these TXT files, right? So this is essentially what people are calling RAG, right? Retrieval augmented generation. What it means is that you use the power of the model, the LLM, that can reason about questions and reason about data, and answer the question based on information you have in your application, your organization. So in this case, it's super simple. It's just TXT files. So we want to answer questions based on that. So let's go see that. And this is not the coolest one, but this is one that will set the stage pretty well. So I should also mention that when you do this type of thing, this embedding store, when you have when you have documents that you want to answer questions with, one thing you need embeddings, right? And what embeddings are basically mathematical representations of text, right? So they're big, long vectors, and you need somewhere to store those, right? So there are a lot of ways and a lot of databases, either generalized or specific ones that store these embeddings. In this case, we're using Redis, right? So if you go here, we're using Quarkus LangChain4j Redis. And because this is Quarkus, I obviously do not have to start Redis myself. What happens is that Quarkus LangChain4j Redis has a dev service that starts Redis behind the scenes, a version of Redis that contains the specific command implementations for these embeddings, right? So what this bot then does is that if I go and open, oops, not the dev UI, sorry, we'll watch that later. If I open the application and start chatting, and he says, "Hello, I'm Bob. How can I help you?" And I'll say, "Hey, Bob, what can you do for me?" And let's see what Bob will answer. And Bob says, "Hello, thank you for reaching out. We offer a variety of products: elite money market, blah blah blah, smart checking account." And this is the data that it got from these TXT files, right? So the idea here is that we have configured Quarkus in a way that will reply to user queries based on data that it has locally. Now, how do we actually do that, right? So here's the let's say harder way of doing it. So this is the original way, and the way that you will probably have to go down anyway, because you'll have to. This is the general RAG pattern needs a lot of customization, right? So this stuff works out of the box, but you're not going to get optimal results. So when you're actually going to need to drill down and figure out the various parameters, how to do things in the best possible way in order to get the best results. So if we go to the bot, in addition to what we saw in the previous example, which was we just had this annotation without anything configured, in this case, we're configuring what we call a retrieval augmentor, right? Retrieval augmentor. And what is that doing? That is saying basically that we need to augment the query, which the query is basically what the user is asking, which in this case was I asked, "What can you do for me?" I need to augment that with information that we have in the database, right? So there are a whole bunch of abstractions in LangChain4j for how to do this. And the way we're doing it here is that we are going to provide all the information we have in our TXT files in order to augment the query. So we're going to send a query to the LLM that's going to have more information, and we can show that what that looks like on the wire. But in this case, we need to configure a bunch of things, right? So we need to configure what the embedding store is. In this case, Quarkus obviously has configured everything behind the scenes. So this is a bean, which in this case is implemented by Redis. The embedding model is very important. It's this is provided by Quarkus and is tied to the model you're using for the chat, right? So we were using GPT 3.5. So essentially you have a similar model from OpenAI that turns text into embeddings. So you need that too. And you need to like limit the results, blah, blah, blah. So you have a way to go low level, let's say, and configure all these stuff automatically, right? And I think you know where I'm going to go with this, is that in Quarkus now we have a way to make this zero configuration. You don't have to do anything, and this will just work, right? And that's what we call Easy RAG, which we'll show later. Questions up to this point?
Nope, I think you're good.
Just one comment I want to make. Everyone talks about RAG, but at the end of the day, RAG is nothing more than sticking extra data into your discussion.
Yes.
And there are dozens of different ways to do that. It's not like one way to do it. You could just add extra context without any other external dependency. So most people do it using some sort of vector store to find similar stuff. But if you have time later, you'll see that you don't have necessarily to use a vector store to do RAG. There are other ways to do it, but at the end of the day, it's how you stick extra stuff into the context, and you have different ways to do that. That's it.
Yeah,
Exactly.
one thing.
Yeah, go ahead.
I'm thinking about the question about is it possible to build multi-agent and connect them together? Is a lot of this knowledge that's coming up about how to use LLM comes from like the data science group or the data science community, which just use different terms, terminology, which makes it sound like different or magical. But in Java or Go or any other language like these problems has been known before, but just independently, looking up data or querying or integrating. So basically the multi-agent, I know if you go and look in LangChain for Python or that kind of thing, they have a whole setup that is like dedicated to this, where for us it's just, well, now they're just two interfaces you can wire up together, or you can call together, or you can chain them together. It's just another integration problem. So anyway, my point is just that a lot of this is just what's called the same content on new bottles, basically. But it is magical what LLM is doing. But all this wiring up is literally just what middleware or application has been doing for decades. It's just you combine them together and do something before you had to spend like ages on. Now it's like, Georgios in 5 minutes can do something that took maybe months or years before.
Yeah, absolutely. So, that's a very good point that Max brought up. So a lot of times you have to be able to look beyond the terminology, right? Because I've read an explanation like why terminology is so weird in different scientific areas, and it's usually like there's a bias towards like complicated language in scientific journals. So you have to sound profound and really smart in order to get published, blah, blah, blah. But in the end of the day, if you like use simpler terms, if you explain the terms in simpler ways anyway, it's easy to understand. But anyway, so going back to what Dimitrios said about what this is actually doing in practice, what RAG is actually doing, remember that, like, let's ignore this because this is a bug from the UI. So I'll remove this. But if you remember what I asked was, hi, Bob, what can you do for me? So this is the question the user asked. And what RAG essentially does is that it uses our information from the TXT files to stick this part into the question, which is answer using the following information, blah, 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 bunch of stuff from the TXT. And that's how then the LLM, without knowing anything about our local data, can reply that, okay, yeah, you have these and these and these products that are useful, right? And there's this useful diagram here that basically explains the process that you ingest your documents. In this case, you put them in a document store, which in this case is Redis, which again, of course, I didn't have to configure, and everything then just works, right? So just to
George, just
yeah,
quick thing. Your screen, your face has frozen by the camera,
okay.
but can you move anything on the screen? Because right now it looks like it's frozen.
Oh,
maybe if you can reshare, we can see that.
Okay, yes, I will try that again. Yes. Yeah. It seems like the Chrome tab has frozen on me. So I'll have to. I'll refresh that. Well, okay, I'll refresh that since you can't see anything on my screen, or basically you see a frozen screen. I'll have to refresh, so I'll get dropped. And
Yeah,
I'll be back.
I can show something while George.
Yeah. Okay, cool.
Yes.
All right. Interesting.
Yeah, I saw he'd frozen, but I thought it was just his face, which we didn't need as long as we had his commentary. But if we don't have the code, then that's more serious.
Yeah. So I think the next example that Georgios would show was like the Easy RAG option, which is a way to do like the same thing, like simpler. So basically, imagine you create an AI service and you just include the Easy RAG dependency here. So that's what I have here. I'm using Easy RAG. And for this particular example, I tweaked a bit the sample, and I'm going to use a local model. So I'm going to be brave here. A local model, which I'll show you how it's configured. So I'll use Ollama with Llama 3, which is like just the latest one. And in this example, I tweaked things a bit more. So in my directory, instead of creating bank accounts, I put a bit of Quarkus documentation. I just took HTML files and I put them in the directory. Now, to see how this works, if you go at the web UI, I have a chat window here, and I can go and talk to my configure model the same way I would talk to ChatGPT. So if I go here and say, do you know, let's say, Quarkus Easy RAG. Let's see what we get back. Again, for this one, I'm using local Ollama and have the video and everything. So let's see if it works.
Yeah, so it runs locally on your machine completely. Yeah.
Completely. That's completely Ollama, Llama 3. And what I'm getting here is I'm getting hallucinations. So it made up an answer. So this is not correct. All right.
Easy RAG user product reactor. Clement's going to love that one.
So it made this
up.
It
said that. It says that.
Yeah.
Yeah. API gateway, all the crap, Now, same thing here. And there's this beautiful tick box, enable RAG. So do you know what is Quarkus Easy RAG? Ask the same question. I'm on the dev UI, no code, nothing here. So let's see what happens. So look here. Quarkus Easy RAG is the easiest way to get started with RAG, right? And I think what I find super cool here is if you look here at the top, we actually show you what goes on in the wire. So that was the question we asked, and we enhanced the question with this stuff that we took from the local files, with the embeddings and everything. And now it knows, has some extra info it can answer, and the answer now it's more relevant. So I think the dev UI is fantastic way for you to test prompts.
And this is the thing, it's like easy RAG is just a name for an approach to avoid having to send everything to the LLM, right? So it's just a process that anyone can implement manually. We now in here LangChain does it.
Yep.
And what Quarkus brings to it is all the wiring up is just kind of done nicely in the existing app. And then on top we add like dev UI and like easy support for dev services with Llama and etc. And it means that you don't have to do much.
So
you don't have to install like 6 layers of applications.
That's a good point, right? So if we were to do the same demo in LangChain4j, all this was possible, but you would have to write a lot of glue code that then you would have to figure out like which points are configurable and have them configured in properties or whatever. And then you would have to do the same thing in like your other applications, whatever other applications you got. So it's the approach of you have a library where it does a ton of things, and then you have a framework which just makes consuming stuff so much easier, and of course provides like the dev services, dev UI, all that stuff is just amazing.
And just to finish this, here I just provided those docs here. I provided some part of the Quarkus documentation. I gave like 5 files here. No, I didn't do any other processing and just fed HTML and it figured it out. So, George, you wanna reshare?
Yeah, sure.
And you could feed in like PDFs or anything, couldn't you, if you wanted to?
Even pictures. It can OCR pictures using what was the name?
Yeah, Tesseract. Yeah, Tesseract. Yeah, so basically this uses like under the hood, it uses like a bunch of Apache Tika and stuff like that. So, but the idea is, it just parses all this stuff. All this parsing is highly configurable, but in the case of Easy RAG, as the name implies, is that we want to get you started so quickly that you don't have to do anything, just configure like which directory you're talking about and everything just works, right? So that's very, very amazing. Very good stuff.
And we've got before you go on, we've got a good question, which is if the way that this works is that we're sending everything on the in a payload to the LLM, does that impose size limits? So in particular, Benjamin Raimondi said there is no size limit for the prompt. Does augmentation overflow the payload sent to the LLM?
So there are limits that you can configure to all this stuff. And obviously, since it's just text, like it can overflow. Like I said earlier, like we're just showing like how to get started and how this works. But I did mention that with RAG, there's like 0 chance you could go to production. If you're talking about like an enterprise application, there's 0 chance you can go to production without actually like looking at the various configuration options for your data, right?
But does the LLM itself impose a limit?
The whole point is to do something smart so you don't send all the data with a prompt. So you find something relevant to send with a prompt. So it's less, it's smaller, that can fit the context, and it's not too big. That's the whole point of RAG.
And does the LLM itself impose limits on the side?
So that's what Sebastian and Sebi is saying in the context that depending on the model, you do have a maximum size that you can send. But like depending on your data, like Dimitrios said, you will get relevant information, but it doesn't mean that even with that relevant information isn't too big to surpass the window. So again, there are strategies to like cut down and like have fewer results, whatever. But you absolutely need to tune this, right? So this is amazing to get started, and it's super good to get things working to make proof of concepts of how how useful this could be. But you absolutely need to tune this for your data and your model, right?
Yeah, and this is the thing. The reason why I wanted us to bring this to Quarkus, right, and make it easy to consume, is that all the stuff we've done is the easy part, right? It's not like we haven't done anything magical, but it means that you, as an app developer, can focus on, hey,
exactly.
how do I test this? How do I make sure that my workflow is not like gonna bring out, I have a chat agent, and then suddenly my chat agent is selling cars for $1 a piece, right? So you need to so you spend time on actually solving the business challenge of how to put an element into your business, where Quarkus just take care of all the technical parts.
Yeah, so we're doing all the mechanical stuff, so you don't have to care. But you absolutely do need to look at the specifics of your use case and tune for that.
Yeah, because even though it's magical, it's not that magical. You still have to think and apply it the right place. Yeah.
And that's a great segue if we can have like maybe a bit more time to show advanced RAG, because there we can make the point exactly.
Oh yeah. That's the next thing I wanted to show, basically.
Yeah, go for it.
Yeah, so we won't have a terrible amount of time to explain this, but like just showing what it can do is amazing. CSV chatbot. Okay, so this is a CSV chatbot. So again, it's a chatbot that answers questions, but it answers questions about movies. And the source of information here is a simple CSV file with the top 100 movies on IMDb, right? So we're actually telling it to not answer general questions about movies. We're telling it that it needs to answer questions only based on the CSV file it knows, right? So, for example, right, let's take a quick look at what the CSV has. It has like the rank of the movie, the name, when it was released, the rating, how long it was, and like genres and stuff, right? So if I go here and say, what is the highest rated movie of the 90s, right? And it will say, let's see.
And I'll just inject here. Imagine if this was your product categories, like
Absolutely.
products in your business. Yeah.
Absolutely. So it says the highest rated movie of the 90s is Shawshank Redemption, right? Which is true based on the data that you have here. If we go and say, okay, how about the next one on the list? And then let's see. It says Silence of the Lambs again, based on, but we can do even weirder stuff. If we can say, let's say like, what is the average rating of the movies? Come on, this seems too much. What is the average rating of movies released in the 90s? Let's see.
I think you're again.
Excuse me?
You've frozen again.
Yeah, I don't know. I think this is Chrome basically that's freezing, because I do see it being very slow. So what I did essentially is asked it, what is the average rating of the movies released in the 90s? And it replies that the average rating is 8.43. So think about that while I restart. Think about how this is done, and when I refresh, we can talk about it, how it actually happens.
And I'll talk a bit about what goes on behind the scenes, right? And so this example is super interesting because it doesn't use a vector store, and what it does is we put the data in an SQL database. It's of course Quarkus will add automatically and wire it up and all this stuff. And when we make the query, first we ask the model, so this is my query and this is my database. This is the schema of the database. Can you make me an SQL query to find relevant stuff? So the model creates a very precise SQL query that we use on the database. We retrieve the data, and then we take that data and put it along with the prompt. So it's super efficient in terms of the amount of data we include with the query. We include exactly you know what's needed to answer the question. So it's very economical, and it shows you also that you don't need a vector database if you have everything in a normal database, which is like what 90% of the people we have. So,
and this is the thing, this stuff here, if you use ChatTips or seen OpenAI, like they announced their plugin system, and they call it now GPTs, where you can actually expose your custom service to ChatGPT, and it seems magical, which it is, but that what George has just shown in that CVS example is literally that you just wire up your existing business logic to an LM model, and you don't require that to be offshore somewhere, like at a OpenAI or somewhere else. It can be in your local application with your local model, or some combination of it, right? And that's the magic, that you can start cross combining these things in a very easy fashion.
Yeah, because the models seem to be amazingly good at generating SQL queries. Amazingly good.
It's been trained on a lot of its.
Yeah, exactly. And SQL is like nearly universal, right? So yeah, it's very good at.
Yeah, and I know I've done similar for HQL and JP, like, and it's pretty good at it. Yeah, George, you want to share, like, just because I'm not. You have more you want to share?
So, well, we don't have a ton of time, but one thing I do want to just mention in passing, two things I want to mention in passing. First of all, we haven't talked at all about memory. We mentioned that LLMs are stateless, but in all the cases we displayed here, there was memory behind the scenes. None of these examples could have worked if there was no memory. And what we do is that we handle the memory for you. So this is a pretty complex topic, I would say. You are definitely going to run into a lot of gotchas if you're first starting out with this, and you use like upstream LangChain4j. You have to know, basically, you have to grind your teeth on a lot of failures in order to understand like how this memory stuff works. We do a lot of smart processing around that, which I can explain further. That's the one thing. The other thing that I will want to say really quickly is that we now have like amazingly cool integration with WebSockets, right? So WebSockets, our newest WebSocket incarnation in Quarkus. I think it's like the third one or whatever. This is the final one. This is the good one.
George, I think show the code, because the code
is the code for the chatbot, the CSV stuff. Sorry, the WebSocket stuff is so small now, right? So basically, all you do is inject your AI service and you chat with it. Wow, like you have this on open with all.
You're not sharing your screen yet.
Sorry. Sorry. Okay, here, let's go. Can you pull it up?
Yeah. If you bring up the code.
Yes. Here we go. So basically, there's like no boilerplate anymore, right? So if you check out the older versions of the samples, you'll see a lot of weird stuff that like make no sense. We agreed. We said this was terrible. But now with the newest WebSocket stuff that and we have in Quarkus, this integration looks just so streamlined. Just works out of the box. It brings like a very, very simple experience. There's a ton of stuff going on behind the scenes, which we don't really have to explain right now, but we can if we want to. But the general idea is that when you're going to use a chat AI service in a chatbot, you want to annotate it with session scope, right? And then you just inject it into your WebSocket, let's say controller, or whatever you want to call it. And everything just works as you expect it to, right? And even it works with concurrent users, everything like that just works, right? So, and I should just say for people, in a lot of samples, you'll see the sample will work. In a lot of non-Quarkus related samples, right? That you'll see people demoing. These will work when there's only like one concurrent user. If there are multiple, you'll get very weird results depending on how the memory is or isn't set up. In Quarkus, these things always just work out of the box because of how we manage the integration between the WebSockets or REST and the chatbots, right?
Basically, what we do is, like in CDI terms, is we enable context to be having a scope, like scope and context, like that these are available to be injected in the right context.
Yes, and use the proper key, let's say, as memory, right? The memory key, because you absolutely don't want two different users, like concurrent users, stepping on each other's data, right?
Yeah. Before we go, I think I saw there's two questions here. One was, Sebi wanted to show that there's a Redis-based memory manager coming soon because he likes Redis, I heard.
Mm-hmm.
There was a question.
Yeah. So.
Here. Oh, good.
Oh, here it is. Here it is. I'm gonna hit the button right now. So this is Sebi's PR. I approved of it earlier. It's all green. I merged it.
Right. There you go.
Merged.
Awesome.
So that's that. And next release we'll have it.
Okay, awesome. And then we had is there no risk to make a prompt SQL injection? That was in the context of the conversation before. Do you want to take that one?
Yeah, so this is very interesting. Basically, there are facilities, let's say, inside the advanced RAG integration that would guard against this, right? But there are two things to it. There's the how we describe the schema to the LLM, which is entirely outside of the user's control. There's no way a user's input can influence what the schema is, what we tell the LLM the schema is. And the second one is that when we do get the query back, there are mechanisms in there that guard against these injection attacks. Now, I'm not saying that it's foolproof because I can't say that, right? Just like no one can say that their stuff is absolutely secure, but I'm pretty sure we have the proper stuff in place, and this will only continue to improve for sure. Yeah.
But to be honest, like you can probably always find a way to convince someone for the AI to generate something that will be bad. But that's why you come back to why this is literally just an old problem in new skin, right? This is just like any other user being able to do a query against your system, and so therefore you should protect it. So don't give that agent access to doing delete or insert.
Oh yeah, of course.
So these are again just problems that we haven't had to consider the same way, but the solutions are already available, and it's just like any other user of the system. So the one thing I wanted to I said you want to show it because you've shown web apps, which is good, and it was just a CLI example that just to show that this is literally as easy to use in a CLI too. Right?
That one. I'm sure Dimitrios has that one open in his IDE because Dimitrios is the one that added this sample.
Yep.
So
this one. Yeah. So I created this when I saw, this friend of mine, Heinz, actually, he was talking about how he used ChatGPT to translate like a whole book into another language. And part of his talk was that he had to talk to the model, and he was asking the model to tell him how to talk to it, and like complicated code and I don't know, pages of that. And I thought, whoa, okay, if we were to do it in Quarkus, we just need something like this, basically. We need a service that's like that big. So you're saying you're a professional translator, translate whatever I give you, the text in this target language. And for this particular example, I don't want any memory because, it's like I hit it once and then I forget about it. And a small a bit of code just to drive a CLI, which is just a couple of lines here, but the AI logic is just this one basically.
Yeah.
And once you have this, you can go like have some examples here. So let's say city examples. This one I compiled it to native also to show exactly you can write command line tools in Quarkus and LangChain, so it has help and everything, And then if you just say translate this French text, it will do English by default. So I'm sure Holly can read French. So this is the original text. Yep. And
That's so cool.
And you can have fun and say, all right, let's say you can execute it in command line mode. So you can start writing here. I'll do some Greek. And in the same line, I'll do French. So there's an example, my friends, right? There's absolutely no problem like translating this. And you can use it in a way to write tools. So let's say I want to, like, I have my text files here. So those are my text files. So cut all the text files, pipe it to my utility, and just, it will work just fine, So you can imagine you can write small utilities that summarize, translate, or, generate very easily. And I saw one was added now with JBank recently. So
Yeah, you don't even need all those conf file and stuff. Just a single file, and you get going.
a single file, yeah.
And that's my whole point. Like this is like this, like the most complex code you had in your example was like how to read input, which is a Java weakness. But all the other stuff is just like any other application, and the LLM is just hidden behind a single method call.
Yeah.
And that's the beauty of it. You can use this everywhere. Right? In there. So yeah. Do we have any other questions in the? I think you got that one there. So that's cool. But no. So where should people go if you want to try this out? Is that just the samples? I guess.
Yeah, all that stuff is in the samples. Yeah.
Yeah. That's cool. Awesome. Was that it? We got everything? I think we got through most of it. So
I think
that's
so,
cool.
yeah.
Awesome. Yeah, we even got code notes during the presentation.
I think that's the first. Yeah.
That was really nice. Awesome.
It's kind of like pair programming, except via YouTube.
Cool.
Well, that's how the cool kids do it, right? Do everything live these days.
That's how it works. Awesome. Well, then let's call it. And thank you.
Take care. Bye.
Bye-bye.
See you all.